And Jerome from Sin City, USA. If you had the book when Bret Hart debuted in WCW, who would he have feuded with first, and how fast would you have had him win the world title? And I got this question, and my first thought was, why even bother when Hogan would have just fucked everything up? But I'll tell you how I would have done it. And feel free to chime in with your own booking scenarios. It's always fun to hear how people would have changed things or did things differently. Not everybody is a Bret Hart fan, but he was a big name that they signed away from the competition for a lot of money. And so you better have big plans for Bret Hart. You're going to sign Bret Hart, what was it, $3 million a year? I think it was like a $9 million contract. You better have some ideas for Bret Hart. And they better be damn good when you bring this guy in. Here's what I would have done. I would have saved Bret as a surprise for Starrcade that year. And have him come out to ward off the NWO when they get involved in the Sting and Hogan match. And that leads to Sting winning the title fair and square, no interference, right? Take away the botched finish. He wins the title just like he did. And Sting is celebrating in the ring with the WCW roster until Bret comes back out. And all of the WCW guys, they kind of back away. They back up to the ropes. They don't know what Bret's going to do. And that leaves Bret and Sting face to face. Bret puts his hand out. The two shake hands to a big pop. And you close out the show with Bret raising Sting's arm. All the wrestlers put Sting on their shoulders. And we have our savior of WCW, right? Or so we think. As far as his first big opponent, I think keeping Ric Flair as Bret's first opponent is fine because it gives him a big name to work with and a big name to beat right out of the gate. You know, beating Flair in WCW, even at that point, he was beaten so much, but I still think it would have, given Bret a credibility maybe in the eyes of the WCW audience right out of the gate, that he came in and beat Ric Flair. Then on the following Nitro, the two of them come together. And Sting too. Right, you have Flair in the ring, Sting's in the ring, Bret's in the ring. Bret makes it his mission to bring the entirety of the WCW roster together to take down the NWO once and for all. This is his mission. That becomes his stated mission for 1998. Hogan does end up with the belt back a few months later because you want him to be able to drop it to Goldberg in the Georgia Dome just the way he did. I don't want to do anything to change that. Goldberg getting hot the way he did in 98 is not something I would mess with. I think they could put the title on him, and while Goldberg keeps racking up wins, they continue the angle with Bret, trying to drive the stake through the heart of the NWO. And it all culminates with the first Bret Hart Hollywood Hogan match, and that could be your double main event for Halloween Havoc that year. You get Hart against Hogan, because fuck the Warrior. He never should have been brought into WCW to begin with. And Bret wins, which finally leads to the disintegration, ultimately, maybe not right away, but ultimately, of the NWO. And with his mission accomplished, Bret now enters the World War III Battle Royal, which comes down to Bret and Sting. And Bret wins the Battle Royal. And then at Starrcade, we get Goldberg against Bret Hart, and Bret, by nefarious means, is the one to end Goldberg's undefeated streak, and he wins the WCW title without Goldberg mule kicking him into retirement this time. We would take that part out. But it's the Bret Hart heel turn. He cheats to win. 1 year to the very event where he made his debut, and after spending all of 1998 masquerading as one of the saviors of WCW, we see it as it was never about WCW. He doesn't care about WCW. He only cares about being the champion, because he was never beaten for the title where he came from before, so he felt it was owed to him. And we end up with heel Bret as the champion leading into 1999. You've got a rematch with Goldberg you could do, Bret defending against DDP, ultimately defending against Sting, who feels betrayed by Bret's actions. And eventually we get Bret Hart against Sting in a singles match. You get Sharpshooter against the Scorpion Deathlock. That would have been a much better way to use Bret in WCW. But again, chime in. I'm sure other people have other ideas for how they would have gone about it. But again, I don't care what you think about Bret Hart. You may not like him. You may think, oh, he's boring. Oh, Sting was better, DDP, Goldberg. You know what? You're giving this guy that much money, you better have a damn good plan for him.